Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome back. So, recently, Event Hubs put out a video, all the characters who survived the Raging Demon. The Raging Demon, aka Instant Hell Murder, aka Shun-Goku-Satsu, is Goki's signature super move. It's been around since the days of Super Turbo. Now, Goki, as far from a D&D alignment standpoint, can be seen as lawful evil. Yeah, he fights to kill, but Goki doesn't come off as someone looking to kill everybody on a whim. Instead, he seeks out opponents that he finds as worthy. If you want to have some insight as to why I think this is the way he is, Udon Comics put out a 2-volume series, Street Fighter III Third Strike Ryu Final, where Ryu journeys, learns what it takes to be a true martial artist, and upon realizing what it takes, challenges Goki to pretty much a final match. Goki could have killed him easily, but Goki allows himself to be defeated by Ryu because he sees Ryu as someone who will transcend the fist, break that cycle. Some people may disagree with me on this. That's fine. We'll have discourse about it. But that's pretty much the crux of Goki's character. Yeah, he may have murderous intent, but that doesn't make him wholly dishonorable. Another example of this is in Elena's ending in Ultra Street Fighter 4, where she snaps a selfie with Goki. Goki is actually, at times, he could be pretty chill, but he is constantly pushing himself to be better than what he was in order to be able to face that worthy opponent. So here, we're going to look at characters who survived the Raging Demon. And here we go.
Shun-Goku-Satsu roughly translates to instant prison murder, but you might know it in English as Street Fighter's iconic Raging Demon technique. This move is presented as one of the most powerful in all of Street Fighter canon, but let's be real, what single attack is more powerful and more deadly than one that's designed to literally murder your soul? That's right, not only is Raging Demon a brutal onslaught of merciless physical fury, it's based in karmic forces that unleash an infernal punishment in which the weight of all the victim's sins in life is aimed directly at their very soul. Pretty metal. In no small part, Demon was created to fuel the overall ferocity, threat, and status of its main user, Akuma, who's designed to be generally overpowered compared to almost all of his Street Fighter counterparts. Funny thing though, despite how successful Capcom has been at making Akuma one of their most canonically and competitively strong characters over the last 35 years, if you look into all the times he or someone else has used Demon to take down an enemy in various Street Fighter storylines, it almost never actually works the way it's supposed to. It's not hard to see why this is, as Capcom doesn't want to kill off characters that it could potentially use in future titles, but we thought it would be interesting to take a look back through the various times people walked away after dying 1,000 deaths. Before we give ourselves fully over to the killing intent, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more Street Fighter explorations just like this one. The first we hear of the Shun-Goku-Satsu is with Gotetsu, master and teacher of Akuma, as well as his older brother Goken. Gotetsu was a master of the Ansatsuken, or Assassin's Fist fighting style, a martial art developed and used by assassins to slay opponents. Now, when you're dealing with the potential of killing folks,
Oh boy, here I go killing again.
there naturally emerges a dark side known as the Satsui no Hado, or the killing intent. In order for a fighter to pull off the raging demon, he or she must hand themselves over entirely to the killing intent. Everyone who did this wound up having their minds consumed by the Satsui no Hado and ultimately became mindless, violent berserkers, except for Gotetsu. Now, we never actually see Gotetsu even try to use the maneuver, as it's his student, Akuma, who realizes that he's super into the whole killing people thing and actually wants to ascend, as he might put it, into said mindless, violent berserker demon state. In an absolutely epic showdown, a young Akuma ultimately defeats his master by using the raging demon to kill him, and thus officially starts himself down the path of trading humanity for violent power. So far, so good. The move does its job, and the headline and premise for this video start to look like they might be falling apart, but stick with me because things don't go down quite so neatly this time. The next victim in Akuma's sights is his brother, Goken, who conversely explores the side of Ansatsuken that's antithetical to the Satsui no Hado, and that's the power of nothingness. After training Ryu and Ken in a non-lethal version of Ansatsuken, Goken is confronted by his brother. Now, these two had clashed a handful of times at this point, and Goken always came out victorious, but this time Akuma gets the upper hand and lands his new signature move. Now, originally the story was that this straight up killed Goken like it was supposed to, but Capcom retconned that in order to bring the old man in as a playable character in Street Fighter IV, updating the story to say that Goken was able to empty his soul with the power of nothingness, and instead of dying, only entered a deep coma for a few years, from which he eventually woke up, dug himself out of his own grave, and somehow suffered zero muscle atrophy from. Somewhere around that same time frame, Akuma would encounter legendary assassin Gen. In his heyday, Gen was pound for pound one of the absolute strongest characters in all of Street Fighter canon, but at this point, he's old, tired, and in the end stages of leukemia. So Akuma and Gen both hear about and seek one another out because they're both badasses who actually look for fights to the death. Gen goes into this hoping for a warrior's death, but when Akuma inevitably goes for the raging demon, Gen is able to block every one of the deadly physical blows and simultaneously empty his soul by achieving a state of mu, or nothingness, similar to what Goken did. Gen rifles off his most deadly attack, and Akuma blocks it in a tit-for-tat exchange that's paid homage to in the intro sequences when these two meet in Gen's Street Fighter Alpha 3 arcade ladder.
So I don't know where that information came from, whether it's from like the official source, but what I remember is Gen faced off against Goki, and Goki, seeing that Gen was ill, actually held back and walked away from the fight. That's canon to me. That, you know, that actually happened.
This does nerf Demon a bit in the eyes of viewers, but it also works to put Gen over like no other in his playable debut. In essence, Capcom traded some of the status of this legendary attack to elevate one of their characters. We are now 1 for 3 on ultimately successful demons, but there are a few non-canonical instances of the move that take place during the days of Alpha that we'll briefly go over. Evil Ryu was introduced here in a what-if scenario wherein Street Fighter's poster boy gives into the Satsui no Hado and becomes corrupted like Akuma. Evil Ryu is able to use Demon and does so against Bushin Ryu Grandmaster Guy. Now, with his speed and experience fighting many enemies at once, Guy is able to either block or evade every one of the physical attacks. Evil Ryu also runs into Shin Akuma, and the two use the maneuver simultaneously against one another, which results in a simple canceling out of both attacks. This brings us to the first time any of us actually saw the Raging Demon in practice, Super Street Fighter II Turbo. Akuma was famously introduced as a hidden boss in Super Turbo, as if you played through the arcade ladder quickly enough and without losing, he'd show up and demon M. Bison so that he could take his place as the final arcade challenge. Now, it's true that almost none of the story in Street Fighter II is concrete, as developers weren't nearly as concerned with solid narrative at that time, but Akuma hitting the Raging Demon on Bison is one of the most memorable moments in franchise history for fans. and so it's kinda weird as there's no explanation beyond, just kidding, that could make this sequence fit with the rest of the story. Bison dies quite a lot in Street Fighter lore actually, but he's able to come back because he transfers his soul to different bodies. That's a great explanation for his resurrection after being physically killed by others, but remember, Raging Demon targets and murders the soul with a force fueled by the weight of the individual's sins, and Bison is likely the most sinful character in all of Street Fighter. This move is anti-Bison in every way, and yet the evil dictator comes back in another clone body after this, which, canon or not, kind of directly inserts into the minds of fans the idea that Raging Demon isn't all it's cracked up to be. Though it's only really explored in the Udon comics, which aim to capture the spirit of Street Fighter more than adhere to the game's admittedly impossible or contradictory threads, Street Fighter IV's Seth also finds himself on the business end of a Raging Demon. Given that Seth was created in a lab as a potential M. Bison clone body, he has no soul of his own, and thus the technique only serves to temporarily disable him, but he quickly reboots. It's actually this sequence that causes the character to go from being a mind-controlled number 15 to gaining sentience, naming himself Seth, and deciding to take over Bison's mantle as the new big bad guy. So in this case, you might even say that Demon had the ironic effect of causing a whole new sentient life to bloom instead of erasing it away. What's more, fans will quickly realize that Demon would be a completely ineffective move against an entire group of other clone characters, which include the likes of Abel, Falk, DeCapri, and even Cammy. On to Street Fighter III, where Akuma runs into yet another big boss, Gil. Though he started as a regular human, Gil was genetically altered by the secret Illuminati Society from youth and has evolved into being a messianic, nearly godlike figure. When Akuma and Gil fight, the former does indeed land his trademark maneuver on the latter, and it does effectively kill Gil. However, Capcom hits us with yet another, just kidding, as Gil has the ability to resurrect himself, and does so despite presumably just having his soul utterly destroyed. Akuma is such a popular character that he was even invited to guest star in Tekken 7 with contributions to the franchise's actual canon. He throws down with the iconic Heihachi Mishima and lands a direct hit with you-know-what, but Heihachi merely stumbles for a moment and is even able to continue their fight afterwards. The move also pops up multiple times in other IPs such as Namco Cross Capcom and Asura's Wrath, and proves not to be fatal in either. You can debate whether instances were canonical or not, or whether guest appearances should count, but at the end of the day, for as many times as Raging Demon has been used, it's really only got a body count of 1 thus far. I mean, Bison and Gil both died physically, sure, but they both came back faster than Mortal Kombat 1 dropped off on Steam. So what to make of all this? Did Capcom set us up with a fantastically imaginative and badass attack totally appropriate for their evil hidden boss character to show off his utter dominance within the world of Street Fighter? Yes. Did they flub around with it and roll back how effective it actually was to sort of cheese their way through certain story threads in a kind of have their cake and eat it too approach? Also yes. And the more that happens, the more Raging Demon loses its luster. And Akuma and his trademark move aren't the only ones who lose out here. I mean, it was absolutely epic the first time any of us found out Gen was able to block the maneuver despite his old age and despite cancer, but that feat becomes less and less epic each time we see Demon fail to work as intended. I'm not gonna nitpick too much because Capcom really created an iconic and wildly successful move here. We've seen tons of other characters pay homage to this maneuver in other fighting games, and references to it have reached out even further into popular culture. And I think all of us are more excited to see what Demon will look like and how it'll function, as opposed to critique it when Akuma joins Street Fighter VI. But I do think Capcom has let the stakes and therefore the status of the move slip a bit over the years, and perhaps having it actually wipe out a character for real would remedy that a bit and return the Raging Demon to its full and former glory. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, we have another one exploring why it is Akuma seems to be so ridiculously strong in just about every fighting game he's ever appeared in, as well as one examining how Akuma will look and play in Street Fighter VI. I've been John Velociraptor Guerrero for Event Hubs. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
I really don't know what to say to that. If based on what Dude is saying is true, with Gen being able to block the Demon, that just takes credibility out the window. But according to the official story, like I said earlier, Gen's sick. Goki doesn't want to, kill off someone who is that infirm. I don't know. This, if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that this report was not based on the story as it unfolded, rather the gameplay mechanics. And I'd have to disagree with a lot of what was said here. If Goki's story was canon to the timeline of Street Fighter, then yeah, he would have a higher body count with Shun-Goku-Satsu. But Vega having clones, Goken emptying himself, those two make sense. But we're taking non-canon stories and making them canon, which, that falls into the mentality of, oh yeah, we're going to make this fiction our reality. And like I said earlier, Goken survived because he emptied his soul. That's canon. Goki refused to kill Gen. That's canon. Vega, it's up in the air because obviously, soul transference. But as of the events of Street Fighter 6, Vega bit it. He's not the big bad anymore. It's JP that's the big bad. Yeah, no, I was expecting something much more from this. So anyway, that's gonna do it, folks. We'll see you in the next one.